Medicine, as we understand it today, is a product of centuries of observation, trial, and error. But long before pills and sterile injections existed, humans turned to the most unusual, bizarre, and often revolting remedies to heal their ailments. From powdered mummies in Egypt to live frogs in medieval Europe, the history of medicine is filled with strange practices that seem almost unimaginable today. Yet each bizarre treatment tells a story about human ingenuity, desperation, and the relentless quest for survival. In an era without scientific understanding of germs, bacteria, or anatomy, people relied on superstition, folklore, and observation to guide their cures. Remedies that now seem grotesque or absurd were once widely accepted as effective treatments for common and rare illnesses alike. What fascinates us today is not merely the shock value of these methods, but the insight they provide into human culture, belief, and resourcefulness. As we journey through the weirdest medicines ever used, we will encounter substances and practices that challenge our notions of health and healing. Some of these cures involved ingredients we would never imagine ingesting, touching, or even being near, while others reflect a curious blend of ritual and experimental intuition. Each story sheds light on the cultural, spiritual, and practical factors that shaped ancient and early modern medicine, revealing a past that is at once unsettling, compelling, and strangely beautiful. Let us begin this exploration into the weird and wonderful history of medicine, where the line between magic, superstition, and early science blurs, and where human creativity shines even in the face of ignorance. Section 1. Powders, poisons, and pests, the most unusual remedies. In the ancient world, medicine often resembled alchemy, more than modern pharmacology. One of the most startling examples comes from Egypt, where powdered mummies, ground up human remains, were used as a remedy for a variety of ailments. These powders were believed to carry magical properties that could cure everything from headaches to digestive issues. Egyptians, in their quest to preserve life after death, inadvertently provided a bizarre form of medicine, combining their respect for the dead with a desperate hope for health. Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks and Romans embraced equally unusual substances. Lead, for instance, was a common ingredient in ointments and cosmetics, thought to smooth skin and strengthen the body. It was later discovered that lead exposure is toxic, leading to serious illnesses. Yet at the time, these remedies were considered innovative and valuable. Similarly, Roman physicians often prescribed gladiator blood or animal organs, believing the essence of strength and vitality could be transferred from one living being to another. The concept of sympathetic magic, the idea that the properties of one thing could influence another, guided many such treatments. In medieval Europe, superstition merged seamlessly with early medical theory. Physicians relied heavily on bizarre animal parts, powdered moles to cure nosebleeds, roasted mouse skins for toothaches, and even dried toads to treat fevers. Snakes, bats, and insects also found their way into medicinal concoctions. One particularly strange cure involved using live frogs to treat swelling. The frog was placed on the afflicted area, and as it squirmed, it supposedly absorbed the disease from the patient. While entirely ineffective by modern standards, this remedy reflects the fascinating interplay of observation and ritual in pre-modern medicine. Herbal remedies, although often effective, were sometimes mixed with these eccentric treatments. Mandrake root, with its anthropomorphic shape, was widely believed to carry magical properties. Physicians prescribed it to induce sleep or relieve pain, but they also associated it with curses and danger. Its presence in medical texts highlights the thin boundary between folklore, superstition, and empirical practice in ancient and medieval medicine. In the Far East, remedies could be equally startling, but approached with a different logic. Traditional Chinese medicine, for example, sometimes used powdered rhinoceros horn, snake bile, or dried seahorses. These ingredients were thought to balance the body's energies, known as yin and yang, or to dispel harmful spirits. Unlike the often haphazard European approach, Chinese medicine frequently combined these unusual ingredients with careful observation of symptoms and body systems, creating a structured, but still bewildering, healing practice. Interestingly, some remedies that appear grotesque actually had unintended medical benefits. For instance, in Europe, leeches were applied to draw blood, believed to cure everything from fever to headaches. While the underlying theory of balancing humors was flawed, leech therapy does have real anticoagulant properties that can aid circulation and prevent blood clots, showing that even the strangest remedies sometimes had a kernel of truth. In addition to animals, humans themselves became a source of bizarre medicinal ingredients. In some cultures, saliva was believed to have healing properties. Wounds were licked to promote faster recovery. Sweat, menstrual blood, and other bodily fluids were similarly used in concoctions and ointments. While today these practices seem unhygienic and alarming, they highlight how desperate people were to manipulate natural substances in the hope of healing. The theme of transference is also evident in many ancient cures. Whether through contact with animal parts, magical powders, or even bodily fluids, the underlying principle was that illness could be absorbed, transferred, or countered by another substance. Though scientifically inaccurate, this concept reveals the human desire to find control over sickness, an emotional and psychological response as much as a physical one. Even with all the strangeness, these remedies were embedded in cultural contexts that often included rituals, prayers, and incantations. Medicine was not just a physical practice, it was a spiritual one. Healers often worked within temples or sacred spaces, blending faith and touch with the most unconventional substances. This integration of body, mind, and spirit is perhaps the most fascinating aspect of ancient medicine, showing that health was always considered a holistic pursuit. As we consider these historical treatments, from powdered mummies to squirming frogs, it becomes clear that what we now call weird was once seen as logical, necessary, and even sophisticated. These practices reveal the creativity, resilience, and determination of our ancestors to combat illness with the knowledge and materials available to them. The weirdest medicines, bizarre as they seem, offer profound insight into the human desire for healing and the lengths to which we will go to achieve it.
Section 2. Cures that shocked the senses, from bloodletting to cannibal elixirs.
In the ever-evolving history of medicine, some remedies were designed not only to heal, but to awe and terrify. The earliest healers believed that illnesses were not merely physical, but often spiritual, moral, or even cosmic in nature. As a result, treatments frequently engaged all the senses, often in ways that would shock modern observers. One of the most notorious practices was bloodletting, a method widely used from antiquity through the 19th century. Ancient physicians believed that health depended on the balance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. When an excess of blood was thought to cause fever, headaches, or other ailments, the physician would drain it from a vein using a lancet or leech. While this might seem brutal today, it was considered a precise science, with detailed instructions on which veins to puncture, how much blood to remove, and at what time of day. In some cases, cupping was employed. Heated glass cups placed on the skin to draw blood and toxic humors out of the body. The sight of reddened skin or oozing blood was reassuring to patients, a tangible confirmation that the treatment was working. Another shocking remedy involved human-derived materials, a practice known as pharmacopoeia humana. During the Renaissance, European physicians often prescribed mummified human remains, believing that ingesting the powdered flesh of the dead could heal wounds, epilepsy, and even fevers. This practice, termed mumia, originated from ancient Egypt, where the embalmed bodies of pharaohs and nobles were thought to retain potent life forces. Over time, these powders became a staple in apothecaries, sometimes mixed with wine or honey to disguise the taste. Surprisingly, mumia was considered luxurious and expensive, a symbol that medicine could be both powerful and prestigious. The macabre extended even further with remedies derived from cannibalistic lore. In 16th and 17th century Europe, human fat, bones, and blood were sometimes used in salves and potions to treat ailments ranging from internal pain to melancholy. For instance, tallow of a hanged man was believed to cure burns, while powdered skulls could be mixed into wine to alleviate headaches. Although horrifying to modern sensibilities, these treatments reflect a deeper philosophy. By consuming or applying elements of the human body, patients were thought to absorb vitality, courage, or healing energy. Medieval medicine also incorporated live animals, often in ways that seem absurd or cruel today. Frogs, eels, and even live snakes were used as topical treatments. In one curious practice, a live frog might be tied to a patient's head to draw out fevers or headaches. The rationale was symbolic as much as practical. The frog, moving and wriggling, could absorb the illness and carry it away. Snakes were sometimes used in poultices, their venom and secretions believed to stimulate the body's defenses. While such treatments were rarely effective by modern standards, they reveal the lengths to which people would go to engage with the natural world in pursuit of healing. Animal excretions were another curious source of medicine. Dried bat dung, pigeon droppings, and cow manure were ingredients in remedies for skin conditions, eye infections, and respiratory problems. In the context of pre-modern medicine, The logic was connected to both observation and symbolism. If an animal could survive in challenging conditions, its byproducts were thought to carry protective or purifying properties. Indeed, some remedies might have offered minor antiseptic benefits, though the overwhelming risk of contamination makes them shocking to contemplate. Across the world, other cultures developed equally unusual remedies. In traditional Chinese medicine, powdered rhinoceros horn was believed to reduce fever and calm the mind, while bear bile and tiger bones were used to strengthen muscles and joints. These animal-derived medicines were part of a holistic understanding of the body's energies, aimed at restoring balance rather than directly fighting infection. In India, Ayurvedic practices sometimes included mercury and arsenic compounds, carefully prepared to be detoxified and used to treat diseases like syphilis or skin disorders. These elements, lethal in raw form, became part of sophisticated medical systems when combined with herbs and ritualized preparation methods. The Renaissance fascination with alchemy and magic further expanded the repertoire of bizarre remedies. Physicians blended metals, gemstones, and mineral powders into elixirs, believing they could transmute illness into health. Mercury, copper, and even gold were dissolved in alcohol or vinegar to treat maladies from syphilis to digestive issues. The principle of sympathetic magic, where one substance influences another, guided these concoctions, reflecting the period's attempt to reconcile mystical philosophy with empirical observation. Oddly, some of these extreme treatments occasionally worked. Mercury compounds, though dangerous, were sometimes effective against bacterial infections like syphilis, and certain animal fats could protect wounds from infection. Even bloodletting, despite being largely harmful, occasionally provided short-term relief for conditions like congestive heart failure or high blood pressure. The mixture of superstition, trial, and accidental efficacy is what makes the history of medicine so fascinating. By examining these bizarre remedies, we gain insight not only into human creativity and desperation, but also into the social and cultural frameworks that defined health. Treatments were intertwined with status, ritual, and belief, reflecting the values and fears of the societies that practiced them. The weirdest medicines of the past remind us that human beings have always sought control over their bodies and destinies, even when the methods seem outrageous today. In the end, these remedies, from bloodletting to powdered mummies to cannibalistic elixirs, tell a story of human resilience, imagination, and the pursuit of life in a world often dominated by uncertainty and disease. They remind us that medicine is not just a science. It is also the mirror of human culture, psychology, and creativity, revealing the extraordinary lengths to which people have gone in the quest for health. Section 3. Healing with Fire, Ice, and Sound. The Extreme Therapies of the Past. The history of medicine is peppered not only with bizarre concoctions, but also with extreme therapies that challenged the limits of human endurance, sensory perception, and even common sense. In an era before modern pharmaceuticals, doctors and healers often turned to elemental forces, fire, ice, vibration, and sound to coax the body back into health. While these methods may seem terrifying or mystical today, they reveal the profound lengths to which people once went in their pursuit of well-being. One of the most striking therapies was cauterization, the deliberate burning of flesh or tissue to treat wounds, stop bleeding, or prevent infection. Though it sounds cruel, cauterization had its roots in practical observation. Before antiseptics and antibiotics, sealing a wound with intense heat often prevented life-threatening infection. Ancient Egyptian texts describe the use of heated metals to treat abscesses, while in medieval Europe, surgeons would apply red-hot irons to lacerations or even surgical incisions. The procedure was excruciating, and many patients required alcohol or herbal sedatives to endure it. Yet the burning sensation was also a form of reassurance. Patients believed that the visible smoke and scarring were evidence that the ailment had been confronted and neutralized. Conversely, cold therapies were equally extreme, but operated on the opposite principle. Ice, snow, and cold water were used to reduce fevers, slow bleeding, and treat inflammation. In ancient Greece, physicians like Hippocrates recommended immersing patients in cold baths for certain illnesses, while medieval healers applied snow directly to inflamed joints or boils. Even in Renaissance Europe, practitioners employed shock baths or ice packs to halt hemorrhages or alleviate headaches. These treatments often bordered on the theatrical. Patients were sometimes suspended in tubs of icy water for hours, their caregivers chanting or reciting prayers to ensure the body's energies realigned properly. Beyond temperature extremes, sound and vibration were surprisingly prevalent in historical therapies. In many cultures, tonic chants, drumming, and singing were used to restore balance to both the body and spirit. Indigenous tribes in the Americas utilized drum circles, believing that rhythmic vibrations could expel evil spirits and disease. In medieval Europe, monks often intoned Gregorian chants over the sick, with the belief that harmonious frequencies could heal both physical and emotional maladies. Some physicians even recommended singing specific vowels or tones over affected areas of the body, reasoning that particular vibrations could stimulate blood flow or realign bodily humors. Modern science recognizes that sound can influence mood, heart rate, and stress, suggesting that these ancient practices, though mystical, were not entirely without merit. Electrical therapies also appeared far earlier than most would expect. By the 18th century, European physicians had discovered that small electric currents could temporarily alleviate pain and improve circulation. This practice, known as electrotherapy, often involved the use of electric fish, such as the torpedo ray, to deliver shocks to patients suffering from gout, headaches, or muscle weakness. Electrotherapy sessions could be both frightening and exhilarating. Patients would report tingling sensations, muscle spasms, or even momentary paralysis. While these early electrical treatments lacked the precision of modern devices, they represent one of the first instances where medicine harnessed a natural force in a controlled, systematic way. Thermal therapies also took the form of saunas, steam baths, and fire-heated rooms. In ancient Rome, public baths were more than places for hygiene. They were centers of healing. Steam, hot water, and even smoke from medicinal herbs were believed to purify the body and spirit. Similarly, Scandinavian traditions employed hot saunas, followed by icy plunges to treat joint pain, digestive problems, and fatigue. These therapies relied on the principle of alternating heat and cold to stimulate circulation, relax muscles, and detoxify the body through sweat. Participants often described intense euphoria, a sense of cleansing, and even temporary relief from chronic ailments, highlighting how extreme physical experiences could feel profoundly restorative. Another fascinating, though dangerous, treatment was therapeutic bloodletting, with leeches combined with pressure points and massage. Leeches were applied not merely to drain blood, but to target specific energetic zones of the body, much like acupuncture. Physicians believed that by extracting blood from particular veins, they could redirect life force to weakened organs or inflamed areas. Sometimes leeches were applied to the temples for headaches, the joints for arthritis, or even near the eyes to restore sight. Though gruesome, modern science acknowledges that leeches can release anticoagulants and improve circulation, revealing an accidental efficacy in a bizarre practice. Lastly, there were therapies that blurred the line between medicine and spectacle. Exorcisms, ritual dances, and controlled panic were occasionally prescribed to treat hysteria, seizures, or inexplicable fevers. Patients might be exposed to loud noises, sudden lights, or extreme sensations to shock the body and spirit back into equilibrium. While these treatments were grounded in spiritual belief, they highlight a core truth. Medicine has always been about more than just physiology. It was also about psychology, perception, and the power of belief to catalyze healing. The common thread running through these therapies is a fascination with extremes: heat and cold, sound and silence, pain and relief. These approaches reveal the human desire to confront illness directly, to feel an active force combating disease, and to trust that the body responds to powerful, tangible interventions. While many of these treatments would be considered cruel or ineffective today, they underscore the inventiveness, courage, and sometimes desperation of past healers and patients alike. Through these extreme therapies, we glimpse a world where medicine was not confined to pills or surgery, but encompassed fire, ice, sound, and ritual. These practices remind us that healing is as much an art as it is a science, and that human imagination has always been a vital part of the quest for health. From burning irons to icy baths, from drumming to electrical shocks, the history of medicine reveals a willingness to embrace the extraordinary in pursuit of life. Section 4. Animal Allies and Ingestible Oddities. The bizarre fauna of medicine. Throughout history, humans have turned to the animal kingdom in extraordinary ways to treat illness, alleviate pain, and restore balance to the body. Before the advent of modern pharmacology, healers often believed that properties inherent in animals, whether their vitality, secretions, or symbolic qualities, could transfer to the sick. These practices ranged from the practical to the profoundly peculiar, reflecting an age when observation, superstition, and imagination intertwined in the pursuit of healing. One of the most widely known and yet astonishingly varied applications involved snake venom and reptiles. Ancient cultures across India, China, and Egypt employed venomous snakes not merely for protection or spiritual symbolism, but for medical purposes. Small doses of venom were believed to cure joint pain, arthritis, and even skin conditions. Physicians in India would dry venom and mix it with herbal compounds to create ointments, while Chinese practitioners might insert live snakes into a controlled chamber above the patient, letting the air infused with the venom's essence reach them in a therapeutic vapor. While this may sound hazardous, and indeed it was, these early therapies were based on acute observation. Certain venom compounds, in minute amounts, do have analgesic or anti-inflammatory effects. Beyond snakes, frog and toad secretions were common in ancient European and Mesoamerican remedies. In medieval Europe, crushed toads were combined with fats, herbs, or honey to treat everything from warts to epilepsy. The rationale, steeped in humoral theory, was that the cold, slimy essence of the amphibian could draw out the hot or corrupt elements causing illness. In Mesoamerica, secretions from certain frogs were used ceremonially and medicinally to cleanse the skin, treat infections, or even induce altered states of consciousness believed to reveal spiritual truths. Modern science now recognizes that amphibian skin secretes potent bioactive compounds, some with antimicrobial and psychoactive properties, suggesting that these age-old practices contained kernels of biochemical wisdom. Insects, larvae, and other small creatures also featured prominently in historic medicine. The Egyptians, Greeks, and later medieval Europeans applied maggots directly to wounds to clean necrotic tissue, a practice astonishingly aligned with modern maggot therapy. While patients may have been horrified, maggots naturally consume dead tissue and secrete substances that promote healing, reduce infection, and stimulate new growth. Similarly, powdered ants, ground beetles, or even scorpions were ingested or made into salves to treat fevers, headaches, or digestive issues. Each culture assigned specific creatures for particular maladies, often guided by principles of like cures like or symbolic resemblance. The legs of a beetle might be used to strengthen a patient's legs, while the venom of a scorpion could be believed to counteract poison-induced weakness. Mammals were not exempt from these practices. Small rodents, bats, and even domesticated animals often found their way into remedies. In Renaissance Europe, powdered dormice were consumed to improve vitality, while in certain Asian traditions, bat guano was applied as a poultice to treat skin conditions. Perhaps most shocking, live animals were sometimes used directly as healing agents. In ancient China, leeches were only the beginning. Live geese were pressed against swollen limbs, Snakes coiled around patients to draw out toxins, and even small birds were trapped under the patient's arms to suck away fevers. While these methods may seem shocking today, they highlight an intuitive understanding of the physical and psychological aspects of treatment. The ritual, tactile, and often startling nature of these therapies was itself thought to catalyze recovery. Perhaps the most perplexing category involves ingesting parts of dead animals or mystical creatures. Powdered mummies of crocodiles, serpents, or even human remains were sold as cures in medieval Europe and the Middle East, often under the guise of alchemical or spiritual potency. Bear gallbladders, powdered tiger bones, and even crushed human skulls were components of panaceas believed to restore vigor or treat mental afflictions. The logic was both symbolic and pseudo-chemical. By consuming the essence of a powerful creature, one might absorb its strength or vitality. While these remedies were largely ineffective and often harmful, they reveal the human desire to harness the extraordinary in pursuit of health, bridging the physical, spiritual, and symbolic realms of medicine. Birds in particular held a special place in historical therapeutics. Swallow eggs, pigeon blood, and even owl feathers were thought to have curative properties. Swallow eggs, prized in Chinese medicine, were consumed to boost immunity and prolong life, while pigeon blood was applied to wounds or ingested for internal vitality. Owls, as nocturnal creatures, were associated with wisdom and spiritual insight, and their feathers or talons occasionally featured in potions to clarify the mind or protect against unseen evils. Even the sounds of birds, such as the song of the nightingale, were believed to soothe fevers and restore calm to an agitated body. The application of these animal-derived remedies was often highly ritualized. Physicians and shamans meticulously timed the collection and preparation of animal parts according to lunar phases, planetary positions, or specific times of day. Certain creatures had to be alive during preparation, while others were ritually sacrificed in elaborate ceremonies. These procedures underscore the deeply intertwined nature of medicine, superstition, and spirituality in pre-modern societies. Patients were not only seeking physical relief, but also a profound sense of cosmic alignment, believing that proper rituals ensured the efficacy of the treatment. While many of these therapies seem shocking to modern sensibilities, some have inspired contemporary medicine. Maggot therapy, leech therapy, and the use of amphibian compounds in pharmaceuticals demonstrate that historical medicine, even at its most bizarre, often contained insights into natural biology and human physiology. The audacity and inventiveness of past practitioners remind us that the human pursuit of health has always been a daring blend of observation, experimentation, and imagination. In exploring the animal-based therapies of history, we see not only the extremes to which humans have gone to heal themselves, but also the depth of respect and awe they held for the natural world. Animals were not merely tools, they were companions, symbols, and conduits of life force, bridging the gap between the visible and invisible. the physical and spiritual. In these practices, the past whispers a reminder. The human body is resilient. The mind is receptive to ritual. And sometimes, the most unexpected allies, furred, feathered, or scaled, can teach us profound lessons about life, vitality, and the pursuit of wellness. Section 5. Plants, Fungi, and Minerals. Nature's most unusual remedies. In addition to animals, the ancient world relied heavily on the plants, fungi, and minerals that grew from the earth, believing them to possess potent curative powers. Long before the discovery of molecular pharmacology, herbalists, shamans, and apothecaries drew upon the natural world in ways that were both practical and profoundly mystical. Blending observation with imagination, these remedies ranged from the comforting to the shocking, offering insight into how humans historically approached disease, health, and the balance of the body. Plants have always been humanity's primary medicine, yet the variety of their uses in the past was astonishing. Consider the mandrake root, whose forked shape often resembled a human figure. Across Europe and the Middle East, mandrake was believed to possess magical properties that could cure infertility, insomnia, or even melancholy. Harvesting the root, however, required ritualistic precision. Folklore warned that the root would scream when pulled from the soil, killing anyone nearby unless protective measures, such as using a dog to pull the root, were taken. Beyond its eerie reputation, mandrake does contain scopolamine and hyoscyamine, compounds that have sedative and hallucinogenic effects, hinting at the blurred line between superstition and pharmacology. Another astonishing plant-based therapy involved the use of hellebore in ancient Greece. This poisonous plant, often ingested in tiny doses, was employed to purge the body of evil humors and to treat mental illness. Greek physicians, particularly those in the Hippocratic tradition, believed that madness could result from an imbalance in bodily fluids, and hellebore's toxic properties were thought to expel excess black bile. While the plant could be deadly, careful dosing sometimes produced a dramatic but temporary improvement in patients' mental states, demonstrating an early, if hazardous, grasp of therapeutic principles. Fungi, too, occupied a peculiar place in medicinal history. Ancient Chinese, Egyptian, and Mesoamerican cultures used fungi for their mystical and practical effects. The fly agaric mushroom, with its vivid red cap and white spots, was employed in Siberian shamanistic rituals to induce altered states of consciousness, believed to reveal spiritual truths and healing knowledge. In Egypt, certain molds were used topically on wounds, an ancient precursor to the discovery of penicillin. These fungi, often toxic or psychoactive, illustrate the daring and experimental nature of early medicine. Healers balanced risk with potential reward, seeking to harness the hidden powers of nature. Minerals and earth-based substances added another layer of strange, yet fascinating remedies. In medieval Europe, powdered mercury was used to treat syphilis, often with devastating side effects. Antimony, arsenic, and lead appeared in numerous concoctions, reflecting the limited understanding of toxicity. But the persistent belief that powerful substances could counter powerful diseases. Clays and earths were also widely employed. Kaolin and other minerals were ingested or applied to wounds to absorb toxins, reduce inflammation, and restore vitality. Some of these natural elements indeed have antimicrobial properties, while others, tragically, caused slow poisoning, highlighting the fine line early medicine walked between cure and harm. The blending of plant, fungus, and mineral remedies often produced the most curious treatments. In Renaissance Europe, alchemists would combine powdered gemstones, ground herbs, and animal products into elaborate elixirs of life, promising everything from extended longevity to mental clarity. Ruby dust, crushed pearls, and ground emeralds were not merely decorative. Practitioners believed the minerals contained essences that could purify the blood, strengthen the heart, or sharpen the mind. Similarly, herbal blends containing belladonna, opium, and deadly nightshade were formulated to treat pain or induce sleep, demonstrating an uncanny knowledge of psychoactive properties, even if the practitioners lacked the chemical vocabulary to explain them. Exotic imports fueled medical experimentation, particularly during the Age of Exploration. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves were not only prized for flavoring, but also for their purported curative powers. Indigenous remedies from the Americas, Africa, and Asia were eagerly studied and integrated into European pharmacopoeias, sometimes with spectacularly unexpected results. Cinchona bark, for instance, introduced to Europe from South America, became the source of quinine, a life-saving treatment for malaria. This example illustrates how centuries of empirical observation eventually converged with modern science, transforming what was once mysterious and sometimes dangerous into reliable medicine. The ritual and symbolism surrounding these remedies cannot be overlooked. Many treatments were prepared according to astrological charts, lunar phases, or ceremonial protocols. Herbalists would sometimes chant incantations over a poultice, believing that spiritual alignment enhanced the physical potency of the remedy. Even when the pharmacological effect was minimal, the ritual itself could have psychological benefits, reducing stress, calming patients, and giving them hope, an often overlooked but crucial component of healing. The psychological impact of bizarre remedies was significant. The use of shocking or fear-inducing treatments, such as bitter herbs, toxic minerals, or strange poultices, might have engaged a placebo effect, amplified by the patient's belief in the medicine's power. Historical records suggest that some patients responded dramatically, not necessarily because of the chemical properties of the substance, but because of the ritualized, deliberate, and sometimes theatrical administration of care. The mind's role in healing was understood intuitively long before scientific explanations were possible. Through these plant, fungi, and mineral remedies, the past reveals a world in which curiosity, fear, ingenuity, and observation coalesced. While many treatments were hazardous or ineffective by modern standards, some contained genuine pharmacological potential, and all reflected humanity's persistent desire to master the art of healing. These practices remind us that medicine is not merely a science, but also a story of human creativity, resilience, and audacity. as practitioners sought answers in the soil beneath their feet, the herbs in their gardens, and the minerals of the earth itself. In exploring the strange and fascinating world of historical remedies, we come to appreciate that the pursuit of health has always been a blend of experimentation, belief, and intuition. Even in the most bizarre practices, whether consuming powdered gemstones, applying toxic herbs, or brewing fungal concoctions, there lies a thread of human ingenuity that continues to inspire modern science, offering lessons in observation, creativity, and the intricate interplay between mind, body, and the natural world. Section 6. Rituals, Symbols, and the Magic of Healing. In the ancient and medieval worlds, medicine was never solely about the physical body. It was as much a spiritual, symbolic, and ritualistic endeavor as a practical one. Beyond herbs, minerals, and animal-based remedies, people engaged in elaborate ceremonies, symbolic gestures, and magical incantations to influence health and recovery. These rituals reflect a worldview in which the body, mind, and matter, and cosmos were interconnected, and healing required a harmonious balance of forces visible and invisible. The role of ritual in healing was profound. Across Europe, Asia, and Africa, doctors and shamans would prepare remedies in conjunction with specific ceremonial acts, believing that the timing, words, and gestures could amplify the efficacy of the treatment. For example, in medieval Europe, apothecaries often followed the lunar calendar when collecting plants, convinced that herbs gathered under a full moon possessed greater potency. Similarly, certain roots and flowers were harvested at precise hours of the day or night to align with astrological influences, reflecting a belief that celestial forces impacted human physiology. Incantations and spoken charms were considered essential components of medicine. In many cultures, a healer's words carried power equal to, or sometimes greater than, the substance being administered. In parts of Africa, North America, and Europe, a practitioner might recite verses or prayers over a poultice or potion, invoking divine protection or banishing malevolent spirits thought to cause disease. These words often combined medical knowledge with mythology and folklore, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of psychology. Patients, reassured by the ritual, often experienced relief or improvement long before placebo effects were scientifically understood. Symbolic objects were frequently incorporated into healing practices. Crystals, amulets, charms, and even colored threads were placed near or on the body, believed to absorb, repel, or redirect harmful energies. In Renaissance Italy, physicians might include a small crystal in a vial of medicinal wine, thinking it could draw out toxins. In China, jade pendants and carved talismans were worn to prevent illness or to encourage recovery, linking material objects with bodily and spiritual health. The symbolism of shape, color, and material mattered as much as the substance itself. Practitioners believed that the right combination could transform the patient's vitality. Magical substances often accompanied ritual acts. Ingredients such as powdered gems, dried serpent skins, and powdered unicorn horn, mythical or rare substances, were mixed into potions, salves, or inhaled as smoke. In Europe, unicorn horn powder, derived from narwhal tusks, sold as mythical substances, was believed to neutralize poisons and cure fevers. Similarly, powdered dragon's blood, a resin from certain trees, was used as a topical treatment to stop bleeding or as an ink for protective spells. These bizarre materials reveal how human imagination intertwined with the quest for health, creating remedies that were as dramatic and symbolic as they were medicinal. Astrological alignments shaped the administration of remedies. Medieval physicians often consulted star charts to determine the optimal timing for treatments. The position of planets like Jupiter or Venus was thought to influence particular organs or systems, so a physician might prescribe a purgative only when the moon occupied a specific zodiac sign. This approach, known as iatromathematics, illustrates the deep connection between cosmology and medicine, highlighting how humans historically sought harmony between the heavens and their bodies. Patients trusted in these cosmic prescriptions, and sometimes the timing coincided with natural recovery, reinforcing the belief in celestial influence. Healing rituals also engaged the senses. Color, sound, and touch were all carefully considered. Aromatic smoke, chants, colored bandages, and music accompanied treatments, creating immersive experiences designed to comfort and influence the patient. In India, Vedic chants were sung over herbal mixtures. In Europe, church bells were sometimes rung during plague treatments to ward off disease spirits. Even if the physiological effect was minimal, these sensory rituals provided structure, reassurance, and psychological support, factors that often facilitated real healing. Cleansing and purification were central motifs. Many rituals involved purification of the body, the home, or the environment, reflecting the belief that disease was both physical and spiritual. In medieval Europe, bathing in aromatic waters, fumigating with incense, or sprinkling holy water on a patient's home were common practices. In Japan, salt and ritual cleansing were used to prevent or treat illness, connecting hygiene, superstition, and spiritual symbolism. These practices reveal an early understanding that cleanliness, environment, and mental state influenced well-being. Magic and medicine were intertwined. Talismans, charms, and ritual acts often accompanied traditional remedies to enhance their effect. In some traditions, the shape of the poultice, the way a herb was crushed, or even the direction in which a potion was stirred could alter the outcome. The act of doing something deliberate and sacred around healing created a sense of control, both for the practitioner and the patient, emphasizing intention as an essential component of recovery. Psychological effects were perhaps the most enduring element of these practices. The ceremony, the magical ingredients, and the words spoken over the patient created a strong sense of hope and expectation. Patients who believed deeply in the ritual frequently experienced alleviation of symptoms, reduced stress, and sometimes even remarkable recoveries. This demonstrates that healing is not just a physical process, but a holistic one, encompassing mind, body, and environment. Ultimately, ritual medicine reveals the human need for meaning. The bizarre, symbolic, and sometimes terrifying elements of past remedies were not arbitrary. They reflected deep attempts to understand and manage life's uncertainty. Every incantation, celestial alignment, or powdered gem was part of a larger system in which illness was both a physical imbalance and a spiritual challenge. By combining observation, trial and error, imagination, and ritual, early practitioners sought to restore harmony, showing that medicine has always been as much an art of hope as it is a science of healing. Through these ritualistic practices, we see that the history of medicine is also a history of belief, imagination, and ingenuity. While many methods were ineffective or dangerous by modern standards, they reveal a timeless human drive to heal, comfort, and impose order on uncertainty. The strange, elaborate, and magical measures of past healers remind us that wellness has always been a journey of the body intertwined with the mind, the cosmos, and the spirit, an enduring testament to humanity's creativity in the face of suffering.
Section 7. Strange medicines across civilizations. Throughout history, different civilizations have approached medicine in ways that might seem bizarre to us today. Yet each culture's practices were deeply rooted in observation, symbolism, and local knowledge. From the frozen tundras of Siberia to the lush jungles of the Amazon, societies developed remedies that combined herbs, minerals, animals, and spiritual practices into comprehensive healing systems. While the methods varied, the underlying principles were remarkably similar. Human health was seen as a balance of internal and external forces, and effective treatment often required engaging both the body and the spirit. In ancient Egypt, medicine was a complex combination of practical and magical remedies. Physicians, known as SWN, relied on an extensive pharmacopoeia of herbs, minerals, and animal products. Crocodile dung, for instance, was used as a contraceptive, while honey, valued for its antiseptic properties, was applied to wounds. But alongside these practical applications, Egyptians placed a heavy emphasis on spells, charms, and incantations. A remedy might involve reciting a magical formula to a patient while applying a poultice, with the belief that words themselves had the power to repel disease. Interestingly, many of these treatments had a basis in chemistry. Honey naturally inhibits bacterial growth, and certain herbs contained compounds with mild medicinal properties, illustrating a blend of intuition and empirical knowledge. In traditional Chinese medicine, the concept of balance between yin and yang, along with the flow of qi, underpinned all health practices. Remedies often included unusual substances, powdered tiger bones, seahorses, and even parts of snakes were incorporated into treatments for a variety of ailments. While modern science would frown upon these methods, ancient practitioners observed correlations between consumption of certain materials and perceived improvements in health. The symbolism was equally important. Consuming a strong or potent animal was thought to impart its attributes to the patient, a principle known as doctrine of signatures, which suggested that physical resemblance or strength of an object could influence the body. In India, Ayurveda offered another fascinating approach. Beyond herbal remedies, Ayurvedic medicine emphasized
the alignment of bodily energies with the rhythms of nature. Treatments could involve not just ingestion of herbs, but also ritualistic procedures, massage, and chanting. Substances like cow urine, while shocking to modern sensibilities, were believed to purify the body and strengthen immunity. This demonstrates a continuity of the principle seen worldwide, that health involves both tangible substances and intangible energies. In the Americas, indigenous peoples employed a range of plant-based medicines, many of which were psychoactive. Shamans would administer hallucinogenic plants like peyote, ayahuasca, or psilocybin mushrooms, believing that these substances allowed the spirit to communicate with the divine or reveal hidden truths about the body and mind. The ritual context was as critical as the plant itself. Ceremonies often involved chanting, drumming, and symbolic actions designed to guide the patient through an altered state of consciousness. Modern research now suggests that some of these practices could indeed produce real physiological and psychological benefits, particularly in the treatment of trauma, depression, and anxiety. In Africa, traditional healers often combined herbal knowledge with spiritual insight. Remedies included extracts from roots, leaves, and animal products, but also relied on charms, ancestral prayers, and divination to guide treatment. In West Africa, the use of certain frog and lizard parts was believed to protect against infectious diseases or curses. What stands out is the holistic approach. The healer evaluated not just physical symptoms, but also social, spiritual, and environmental factors, recognizing that human health is deeply embedded within a network of relationships and unseen forces. In medieval Europe, strange remedies included almost every part of the natural world, often tied to superstition or magical thinking. Mercury was used to treat syphilis, while crushed pearls were prescribed for indigestion. Leech therapy, widely practiced, was both bizarre and effective to a degree, as it relieved blood pressure and reduced inflammation. Physicians and apothecaries also drew heavily on astrological medicine, aligning treatments with the position of the moon, planets, and stars. Here again, the intersection of observation, symbolism, and ritual shaped how medicine was practiced. Across these civilizations, several common themes emerge. First, animals and plants were not just valued for their chemical properties, but for the qualities they symbolized: strength, courage, vitality, or protection. Second, ritual and timing mattered. Medicines were often administered at specific hours, phases of the moon, or seasons to maximize their effect. Third, sensory and psychological engagement was integral. Smells, colors, sounds, and touch were used deliberately to comfort, impress, or even intimidate patients into cooperating with the treatment. Finally, the healer's authority and presence were crucial. A respected practitioner's words, gestures, and reputation could significantly influence outcomes, highlighting the timeless importance of trust in the healing process. Despite the strangeness of some remedies, there was often a kernel of practical wisdom. Many herbs contained bioactive compounds. Honey, garlic, and willow bark, the source of aspirin, were all used effectively long before their pharmacological properties were scientifically understood. Even seemingly irrational practices, like placing amulets or reciting spells, often produced real benefits through stress reduction, placebo effects, or improved adherence to treatment. These patterns reveal that human ingenuity in medicine was always a mixture of observation, experimentation, and imagination. Ultimately, the study of ancient and traditional medicines across cultures offers a profound insight into humanity's relationship with health. Remedies were not merely about curing disease, but about understanding the human experience, body, mind, spirit, and environment. They show us that the drive to heal is universal, and while methods differ, the underlying principles of observation, symbolism, and ritual remain remarkably consistent. By studying these practices, we gain not just historical knowledge, but also a deeper appreciation for the creativity, adaptability, and resilience of human beings across time and space. The strange, ritualistic, and sometimes shocking medicines of the past remind us that medicine has always been more than a science. It is an art, a philosophy, and a testament to human curiosity and hope in the face of suffering.
Section 8. Bizarre and dangerous surgical practices across cultures.
Surgery, as we understand it today, is guided by precise knowledge, antiseptics, anesthesia, and advanced tools. Yet, before these innovations, surgical practices around the world often ventured into the strange, the dangerous, and the downright horrifying, shaped as much by ritual and belief as by empirical observation. Across cultures, early surgeons experimented with human anatomy, healing through trial and error, sometimes with shocking results. While these procedures may seem barbaric now, they reveal a deep human desire to intervene in illness and injury, and an ingenuity that often pushed the boundaries of contemporary understanding. In ancient Egypt, surgery was surprisingly advanced in some respects. Texts like the Edwin Smith Papyrus describe methods for treating fractures, wounds, and abscesses with remarkable precision. Yet, alongside these practical procedures, Egyptians sometimes employed strange instruments and methods. Cauterization using heated metal was common for controlling bleeding, a technique both effective and painful. Surgeries were performed with the understanding that the human body was interwoven with spiritual forces. Certain procedures required incantations to protect the patient from malevolent spirits. Even mummification, which involved precise removal of internal organs, contributed to anatomical knowledge that informed surgical techniques, though its ritualistic aspects reveal a unique interplay between spirituality and medical practice. In ancient India, the practice of surgery, particularly Sushruta Samhita, a medical text attributed to the surgeon Sushruta, was surprisingly sophisticated. It describes techniques for reconstructive surgery, including rhinoplasty, nose reconstruction, which was necessary due to punishments like nose amputation. Surgeons used fine instruments made from natural materials and emphasized cleanliness, but the procedures were performed without modern anesthesia, relying on herbal sedatives and patient endurance. Bloodletting was another standard practice, thought to balance bodily humors. Despite the ingenuity, the danger was immense. Infections, excessive bleeding, and shock were common. Yet patients submitted because surgery promised restoration of function and honor. In medieval Europe, surgical practices were equally startling. Barbers, who often doubled as surgeons, performed bloodletting, tooth extraction, and amputations, frequently without understanding of germ theory. The iconic red and white barber pole symbolized the bandages used during these procedures. Trepanation, the drilling or scraping of holes into the skull, was performed to treat head injuries, epilepsy, or perceived evil spirits trapped in the mind. Patients sometimes survived, indicating the degree of skill, but many succumbed to infection or shock. Surgery was also entwined with astrology. Certain operations were performed only when the stars were favorably aligned, reflecting the belief that celestial forces influenced the body's response to intervention. In Japan, early surgical practices were shaped by both Chinese medicine and unique indigenous approaches. During the Edo period, surgeons performed procedures like cataract extraction and tumor removal, often under the guidance of a spiritual framework. Herbal anesthesia, such as cannabis or opium derivatives, was used to dull pain. Interestingly, post-operative care emphasized the balance of qi, energy, and harmony with nature, demonstrating the cultural integration of philosophy and practical healing. Surgical manuals detailed meticulous techniques, yet the mortality rate remained high, and patients' survival was considered a mixture of skill and divine favor. In pre-Columbian Americas, indigenous healers combined surgical interventions with ritual. For example, trepanation was practiced widely across the Andes, with evidence of skulls showing successful bone healing. Shamans often accompanied surgery with chanting, ritualistic dances, and herbal medicines intended to prevent infection and guide the patient's spirit. In Mesoamerica, herbal concoctions and obsidian blades, razor-sharp volcanic glass, were used in both surgical and sacrificial contexts, blurring the line between medical necessity and ritual. The precision with which they operated, particularly using obsidian scalpels, rivals some modern surgical tools in sharpness, showing that even in a ritualized context, practical outcomes were carefully considered. In Africa, early surgeons often combined knowledge of anatomy with spiritual practices. For example, in certain regions, minor surgeries like removing cysts or draining abscesses were performed using crude metal tools, while charms and prayers were employed to protect the patient from spiritual contamination. In other cases, trepanation or cranial surgery was practiced to treat headaches, seizures, or supernatural afflictions. Despite the risks of infection and hemorrhage, many patients survived, suggesting a careful observation and an empirical understanding of human physiology. Across all these cultures, several patterns emerge. First, surgery was rarely separated from ritual and belief. Whether through incantations, astrology, or shamanic guidance, early surgeons understood that psychological and spiritual factors could affect recovery. Second, instruments were adapted from local materials, from obsidian blades to sharpened bronze, illustrating innovation within environmental constraints. Third, mortality was a constant companion. Without anesthesia, antiseptics, or advanced knowledge of physiology, patients faced incredible risk. Yet, these procedures laid the groundwork for modern surgery, showing that human curiosity and the desire to intervene in disease are universal. Even the strangest practices sometimes had unexpected benefits. Bloodletting, though largely ineffective for many conditions, occasionally relieved pressure or infection, while trepanation might reduce intracranial pressure. The use of herbal sedatives or antiseptic plants often improved outcomes, and the careful observation of patient recovery across repeated procedures provided early empirical data. Human ingenuity, observation, and trial and error experimentation persisted even in the face of high risk, demonstrating that surgery was as much an art as a science, long before germ theory or anesthesia existed. Ultimately, the study of ancient and traditional surgical practices reveals the intersection of science, belief, and courage. Patients and surgeons alike risked life and limb, guided by intuition, ritual, and empirical observation. While modern medicine has refined and expanded these practices, understanding their origins reminds us of the universal human desire to confront illness and injury, even under the most perilous conditions. It also highlights the creativity, resilience, and adaptability that define human history. Even in the face of pain and uncertainty, early societies pushed the boundaries of what was possible to heal and protect the human body. From cauterizations to trepanations, from obsidian scalpels to ritualized incisions, the strange and dangerous surgical practices of the past offer a fascinating window into the courage, creativity, and sometimes terrifying ingenuity of our ancestors. Each operation, whether successful or deadly, reflects the timeless human quest to confront mortality, alleviate suffering, and assert mastery over the body's vulnerabilities. Section 9. Strange and surprising beauty and health treatments that border on surgery. Throughout history, the pursuit of beauty and health often led people to engage in treatments that, to modern eyes, appear bizarre, extreme, and sometimes dangerously close to surgery. These practices reveal not only a deep fascination with appearance and vitality, but also the lengths humans have gone to manipulate their bodies, often blending empirical observation with superstition, ritual, and creative improvisation. In ancient Egypt, beauty and health were deeply intertwined with spiritual beliefs. Egyptians prized youthful skin and symmetry, associating physical perfection with divine favor. Treatments sometimes included invasive procedures. For example, depilation was performed with a combination of sugar, resin, and heated tools to remove hair, a process that could cause burns if mismanaged. They also applied topical mixtures of lead-based cosmetics and animal fats to lighten the skin or preserve its elasticity, practices that were toxic but reflected sophisticated experimentation. Beyond cosmetics, Egyptians practiced minor surgical interventions to maintain health, like draining abscesses or lancing boils, and some women even underwent primitive forms of ear or nose shaping, emphasizing the interplay between aesthetics and functional care. In ancient China, beauty treatments often merged with early medical knowledge. Acupuncture, for example, is widely recognized today as a medical practice, but in its earliest forms, it was also used for enhancing appearance by promoting circulation and a harmonious flow of qi that purportedly led to radiant skin. Additionally, herbal plasters and poultices were applied to reshape the body, reduce swelling, or firm the skin, and some of these involved minor incisions to apply medicinal substances directly beneath the surface. Chinese physicians also employed cosmetic surgery in subtle forms, such as the early rhinoplasty techniques described in medical texts, primarily to restore form after injury, but occasionally adapted for aesthetic purposes. In medieval Europe, beauty and health treatments could be shockingly invasive. Plasters containing animal fat, mercury, or other toxic substances were applied to the skin, sometimes in combination with cauterization or controlled bleeding to purge impurities and improve complexion. Women used tight corsets to mold the body, a practice that could deform the ribs and compress internal organs, with long-term consequences on health. Tooth blackening and removal were fashionable among some elites, intended to signify social status, while nasal reshaping and eyelid modifications, sometimes performed by traveling practitioners, blurred the line between cosmetic ambition and surgical intervention. Barber surgeons occasionally carried out minor cosmetic procedures, such as removing blemishes or repairing minor injuries, demonstrating the dual role of aesthetics and medicine. In Japan, historical beauty regimens often intersected with invasive or semi-surgical methods. Geishas and aristocratic women sought pale, smooth skin, achieved through repetitive application of mercury or lead-based powders. Facial massage, sometimes with pressure techniques bordering on subdermal manipulation, was believed to enhance circulation and tighten features. Hair was styled and shaped with wooden or metal tools that occasionally caused scalp injuries, and teeth blackening, ohaguro, involved acidic substances that could erode enamel. Some elite women even underwent minor alterations to their facial features, guided by medical practitioners to achieve desired symmetry, reflecting a fascinating integration of aesthetic ideals with rudimentary surgical skill. In pre-Columbian Americas, health and beauty were similarly intertwined with spiritual and physical practices. The Maya and Aztec elites valued body modification, such as cranial shaping and dental inlays, as signs of status and beauty. Cranial shaping involved binding infants' heads to create elongated skulls, an invasive process that reshaped the bones over years, sometimes causing lasting discomfort or deformation. Dental inlays, small jade or turquoise stones inserted into drilled teeth, were technically surgical, requiring precision and careful knowledge of anatomy to avoid infection or nerve damage. These practices were considered both aesthetically desirable and spiritually significant, illustrating how appearance, health, and ritual were inseparable in many ancient societies. In Africa, cosmetic and health practices often employed tools and techniques that skirted the line between beauty and surgery. Among the Ndebele and other groups, facial scarification and lip or ear modifications served as rites of passage and markers of status, requiring cutting and healing with herbal antiseptics. Certain treatments for skin conditions, such as boils or lesions, involved deliberate lancing and application of plant-based poultices. Some communities also practiced bloodletting or minor surgical interventions in tandem with beauty treatments, aiming to purify the body and enhance vitality while simultaneously modifying appearance. Across cultures, a common theme emerges: the human desire to manipulate appearance and enhance health often led to invasive, sometimes surgical interventions. These practices reflect both ingenuity and risk, demonstrating that beauty and health were not passive endeavors, but active, sometimes painful projects. The line between medical necessity and aesthetic desire was fluid, and the knowledge of anatomy and healing was applied as much for transformation as for survival. Even strange and dangerous beauty practices occasionally had unexpected benefits. Cranial shaping, though deforming, rarely resulted in neurological impairment if applied correctly. Herbal poultices sometimes reduced infection, and facial massage or acupressure could improve circulation and skin tone. The persistence of these methods, despite their risks, underscores a human willingness to endure discomfort and experiment with the body in pursuit of ideals of health, beauty, and status. Ultimately, these practices highlight an interplay between culture, belief, and empirical observation. Humans have long sought to enhance, repair, or alter their bodies, sometimes in ways that mirror surgical intervention. While modern aesthetics and medicine have refined these ideas, the ancient and early modern fascination with transformation, health, and beauty reveals a timeless aspect of human nature. The desire to assert control over the body, manipulate appearance, and align the physical self with ideals of vitality, status, and spiritual harmony. In examining these historical treatments, we gain not only a glimpse into past societies, but also a deeper understanding of human ingenuity, daring, and the persistent quest to balance beauty with well-being, even when it required extraordinary, invasive, and sometimes perilous methods.
Section 10. Unusual sleep, diet, and exercise remedies in the quest for health. Throughout history, humans have constantly sought ways to improve their health, extend life, and enhance vitality. While many remedies were herbal or medicinal, some of the most fascinating approaches involved sleep, diet, and exercise, often combined in rituals and routines that seem bizarre to modern eyes. These practices reflect the ingenuity, experimentation, and sometimes sheer audacity with which humans have attempted to manipulate their bodies and optimize their well-being. Sleek remedies and rituals in the past were particularly varied. In medieval Europe, physicians believed that the quality of sleep was closely linked to humoral balance, the balance of blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Patients with perceived imbalances might be instructed to sleep on special beds or mattresses infused with herbs like lavender, rosemary, or thyme, thought to promote restorative rest and ward off evil spirits. In some cases, weighted blankets filled with herbs or grains were used, applying gentle pressure to the body, an early precursor to modern weighted therapy for anxiety and insomnia. Remarkably, certain communities in Asia practiced elaborate pre-sleep rituals involving chanting, meditation, or exposure to moonlight to regulate circadian rhythms and encourage harmonious dreams.
revealing an awareness of sleep as a complex mind-body phenomenon. Dietary interventions were equally inventive, though sometimes bizarre or extreme. In ancient Greece, physicians like Hippocrates believed that specific foods could restore bodily balance, recommending combinations of grains, legumes, and vegetables for optimal energy, while limiting cold or wet foods believed to provoke illness. In medieval monasteries, fasting was employed not only for spiritual purposes, but also for health, with strict regimens that included intermittent fasting, controlled portions, and even consuming only one type of food at a time to prevent humoral disturbances. Some Renaissance physicians prescribed exotic ingredients such as powdered pearls, crushed amber, or even mummy-derived powders as dietary supplements aimed at prolonging life and enhancing vigor. These practices demonstrate a mix of empirical observation and mystical belief, as humans sought substances that could influence both body and spirit. Exercise routines and historical health practices were sometimes surprisingly sophisticated and other times strikingly odd. The ancient Greeks practiced structured gymnastic routines to strengthen the body and maintain flexibility, recognizing the connection between physical fitness and mental clarity. Roman physicians recommended walking, swimming, and horseback riding to maintain balance and circulation. However, some medieval practices bordered on the eccentric. Monks and ascetics engaged in controlled movement exercises designed to stimulate the humors, often accompanied by deep breathing, chanting, or ritualistic gestures believed to enhance internal energy. In certain cultures, public demonstrations of strength or flexibility were also considered therapeutic, combining social, spiritual, and physical benefits in a single regimen. Some remedies crossed the line between discipline and danger. For instance, in Renaissance Italy, practitioners recommended alternating hot and cold baths to shock the body into resilience, followed by vigorous movement exercises intended to strengthen the heart and lungs. In Japan, samurai and martial artists developed intricate katas and breathing sequences that simultaneously trained the mind and conditioned the body, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of what we now call mind-body integration. Similarly, in Africa and the Americas, indigenous tribes often combine dance, ritual movement, and controlled fasting to achieve heightened states of alertness, endurance, and spiritual well-being, revealing an intuitive recognition of the interplay between physical exertion, diet, and mental state. Sleep manipulation was not limited to herbs and routines. In certain European and Middle Eastern traditions, people used sleep deprivation or polyphasic sleep schedules to alter consciousness, boost creativity, or increase spiritual sensitivity. Monks practicing the divine office would sleep in segmented intervals to maintain constant prayer and reflection, believing that fragmented sleep could fortify the soul and discipline the body. In some Asian practices, brief naps during the day were seen as vital for maintaining energy, while long nighttime slumbers were moderated to prevent stagnation of qi or vital fluids. These strategies demonstrate an awareness of sleep's profound physiological and psychological impact, even in eras before scientific measurement or understanding of circadian rhythms. Dietary extremes often mirrored these sleep experiments. Certain ascetics or healers believed that near starvation could purify the body and enhance mental clarity, a principle echoed across continents in fasting rituals, detoxification diets, and seasonal restrictions on food. Some cultures introduced bizarre dietary supplements, powdered bones, rare minerals, or exotic animal parts, believed to enhance longevity, strength, or cognitive function. While many of these interventions were ineffective or dangerous, they represent a remarkable human drive to explore novel means of maintaining health, combining observation, mythology, and experimentation in creative, if sometimes reckless ways. Exercise regimens occasionally became extreme experiments in endurance. Greek athletes and soldiers practiced intense, repetitive drills to condition their bodies, sometimes suffering injuries or long-term strain. In medieval Europe, jousting and combat training served both martial and therapeutic purposes, promoting strength while demonstrating social status and resilience. Indigenous cultures often incorporated physically demanding dances or ritualized hunts as a form of holistic health practice, intertwining community, spirituality, and physical fitness in ways that modern medicine is only beginning to appreciate as essential for well-being. A striking aspect of these historical practices is the blending of practical observation with spiritual and symbolic meaning. Sleep, diet, and exercise were never purely physiological concerns. They were embedded in cultural narratives about balance, virtue, and divine favor. From polyphasic sleep schedules to extreme fasting, from herbal tonics to ritualized movement, these strategies demonstrate the human tendency to explore and innovate, often pushing the limits of comfort, safety, and belief in the pursuit of health. Ultimately, these unusual remedies illuminate a universal truth. Humans have always sought to optimize their lives, combining curiosity, courage, and creativity in ways that sometimes appear eccentric, but reveal profound insights about resilience, adaptation, and the interconnectedness of body and mind. Even when they seem strange or hazardous, these practices underscore the timeless human desire to live fully, harmoniously, and with vitality. Section 11. Bizarre spiritual and magical practices for health. Throughout history, humans have often intertwined health with spirituality and magic, blending observation with belief in unseen forces. In many cultures, illness was understood not just as a physical condition, but as a manifestation of spiritual imbalance, divine displeasure, or malevolent influence. Remedies thus frequently involved rituals, charms, and mystical interventions, some of which appear bizarre or extreme to modern sensibilities. Yet they reveal profound human ingenuity and psychological insight. In ancient Egypt, healing was inseparable from religious practice. Priests and magicians would prescribe protective amulets, incantations, and spells to treat ailments believed to be caused by hostile spirits or curses. For example, small figurines of deities were placed on the sick person's body, or inscriptions of sacred texts were carried as talismans. Some remedies combined herbal medicine with ritual action. such as sprinkling holy water over medicinal plants before administration. This fusion of magic and practical treatment reflects an understanding of the psychological impact of belief. Confidence in divine protection could enhance recovery and bolster resilience. Similarly, in medieval Europe, spiritual interventions dominated medical practice. The humoral theory of health coexisted with the conviction that sins, demonic influence, or curses could manifest physically. Healing rituals often involved holy relics, pilgrimages, or exorcisms, sometimes alongside bloodletting or herbal treatments. Monks would recite prayers over patients or apply relics of saints to wounds, believing the physical contact could transmit divine power. Even mundane objects, such as a piece of coral, were imbued with protective qualities against fevers or evil spirits. While these practices lacked scientific basis, they served a dual purpose: addressing the body and soothing the mind, reducing fear and stress, which modern studies show can influence health outcomes. Folk medicine across different continents included remarkable, sometimes unsettling, magical practices. In China, Taoist physicians combined acupuncture, herbal remedies, and talismans to regulate the flow of qi, the vital life energy. Certain rituals involved inscribing characters on the body or burning symbolic objects to dispel illness. Similarly, in indigenous cultures of the Americas, shamans would perform intricate dances, chants, and ceremonial purifications to remove spiritual obstructions or to summon protective spirits. These practices emphasized the interconnectedness of mind, body, and environment, a concept only recently explored by modern psychosomatic medicine. The use of charms and protective objects was widespread. In medieval and Renaissance Europe, physicians and lay people alike employed objects like herbal wreaths, amulets, and engraved stones to prevent or cure diseases. Some believed that wearing a small pouch containing powdered gems, crushed plants, or fragments of sacred texts could ward off plague or fevers. Even the act of carrying such an object had psychological effects. It provided comfort, a sense of control, and an anchor in the chaotic reality of illness. Today, we understand that rituals like these can induce placebo effects, demonstrating that the human mind plays a crucial role in physical well-being. Magical practices often incorporated symbolism and storytelling, highlighting the importance of narrative in healing. In some cultures, illnesses were personified as spirits or demons, and treatments involved enacting stories of their defeat or banishment. For instance, in certain African traditions, shamans would perform symbolic battles against invisible forces representing disease, sometimes using puppets, masks, or figurines. Similarly, medieval Europeans would write protective prayers or sacred symbols on parchment, which were then placed in homes or carried on the body. These rituals gave structure to uncertainty and empowered the patient to feel active in the healing process. Odd yet fascinating practices also included methods that might seem extreme today. Some Renaissance healers recommended creating magical baths with herbs, gems, or powders, while chanting incantations to draw out illness. Others suggested ritualized exposure to elements, such as standing in the moonlight or lying in dew-soaked grass, to absorb beneficial energies. These treatments often aimed to harmonize the individual with cosmic or spiritual forces, echoing a belief in the interconnectedness of all life, a perspective modern medicine is only beginning to explore through concepts like holistic and integrative health. Even in the 18th and 19th centuries, spiritual health remedies persisted alongside emerging scientific medicine. Quack doctors would sell powders, potions, or devices claiming to rebalance the body's energies, sometimes infused with mystical symbolism. In some cases, rituals such as prayer circles, chanting, or symbolic gestures were considered essential to activate the effectiveness of medicinal products. Here, the combination of psychological reassurance and tactile engagement illustrates a deep, intuitive understanding that health encompasses more than just the physical. The enduring lesson of these bizarre spiritual practices is that health has always been a mind-body-spirit endeavor. Even when remedies involved elements that seem strange, amulets, incantations, magical baths, or symbolic enactments, they reflect humanity's persistent effort to influence fate, regain control, and bring comfort in the face of illness. While modern medicine relies on empirical evidence, these historical practices remind us that belief, ritual, and spiritual, and hope are powerful tools that shape perception, experience, and sometimes recovery. The curiosity, creativity, and courage behind these ancient remedies are striking. Humans have consistently explored ways to heal themselves, not only through material means, but also by engaging imagination, spirituality, and community. From chanting to talismans, from ritual dances to magical baths, these practices demonstrate an ingenious blending of practical observation and cultural belief, revealing that the story of medicine is as much about psychology and culture as it is about biology and chemistry. Ultimately, these bizarre spiritual and magical remedies remind us that health is not merely a physical state. It is also deeply psychological, social, and symbolic. They show how our ancestors navigated uncertainty, fear, and mortality with creativity and ritual, crafting intricate systems of care that nourished both body and soul. Section 12. Odd anatomical beliefs and body-specific remedies. Throughout history, humans have often misunderstood the workings of their own bodies, yet they continually sought ways to heal, protect, and enhance them. In an era before modern anatomy and medical science, speculation about organs, bodily fluids, and invisible forces guided treatment, and sometimes led to practices that seem bizarre or even shocking today. These remedies often focused on specific body parts, reflecting the belief that the location of an ailment held secrets to both its cause and cure. In ancient Greece, the humoral theory dominated medicine. Health was thought to depend on the balance of four bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Each humor corresponded to temperament and physical constitution. Illness was believed to arise when one humor dominated or depleted. Treatments were carefully targeted: bloodletting to reduce excess blood, purging to eliminate unwanted humors, and even dietary adjustments to restore balance. Although we now know these methods could be harmful, they demonstrate a sophisticated, if incorrect, attempt to systematize human physiology and link it to observable symptoms. Medieval Europe carried these beliefs into more elaborate and unusual practices. Physicians sometimes prescribed remedies that involved specific body parts of humans or animals, based on sympathetic or magical reasoning. For instance, a piece of mummified human skin, ground into powder, might be recommended for skin ailments. Similarly, powdered stag's heart was believed to strengthen courage and fortify the chest, while powdered skull fragments were thought to relieve headaches. These treatments relied on the idea of like cures like, a precursor concept to homeopathy. Though extreme, they reflect the human desire to connect physical substances to bodily effects in concrete, tangible ways. Herbal remedies were often highly targeted to particular organs. The doctrine of signatures, popular in Europe and the Middle East, suggested that the shape or color of a plant indicated its healing properties. Walnuts, resembling the brain, were used to enhance cognition. Kidney-shaped beans were thought to treat kidney problems. Eye-shaped seeds, root formations, or even the hue of a flower guided healers in prescribing remedies. While modern science dismisses many of these claims, studies show that some of these herbs did have medicinal properties, revealing a blend of observation, intuition, and cultural symbolism. In traditional Chinese medicine, body-specific remedies were intricate and highly ritualized. The body was considered a network of meridians through which qi, or vital energy, flowed. Illness in a particular organ was thought to reflect a blockage or imbalance in corresponding meridians. Treatments such as acupuncture, moxibustion, and herbal poultices were carefully tailored to these pathways. While modern medicine may view these concepts metaphorically, but doctrine of signatures maintained integrity and objective to its own terms. Contemporary research increasingly recognizes the impact of focused stimulation and mindfulness on physiological processes, hinting at the wisdom embedded in ancient practices. Animal parts were another central element in remedies. In Renaissance Europe, powdered horn, bones, or fat from specific animals were considered curative for ailments affecting particular organs. The use of eagle's liver to treat eye conditions, bear fat for joint pain, or snake oil for inflammation demonstrates how humans historically assigned properties to bodily tissues based on symbolic or perceived energetic qualities. These remedies illustrate a fusion of observation, cultural storytelling, and ritualized belief. The medieval fascination with blood also led to peculiar practices. Leech therapy and bloodletting targeted specific veins to restore humoral balance. In some cases, patients were instructed to apply blood from certain animals or even humans to the affected area. This approach was guided by the idea that transferring life force could revitalize or correct imbalances. Although dangerous by modern standards, these interventions reflect a persistent effort to intervene physically in disease processes using the knowledge and resources available at the time. Oddities in dentistry and oral care also highlight body-specific beliefs. Toothaches were considered not just a local problem, but connected to other organs like the heart or stomach. Remedies included placing live frogs on aching teeth or applying mixtures of herbs, roots, and metals. Earaches might be treated by inserting magical powders or herbs into the ear canal. While these methods appear absurd today, they reveal an intuitive recognition of interconnectedness within the body and an earnest attempt to address suffering. Some remedies targeted women's reproductive health, reflecting both medical curiosity and societal attitudes. Herbs, poultices, and rituals were prescribed to regulate menstruation, facilitate childbirth, or enhance fertility. In certain cultures, amulets or charms were worn over the abdomen to prevent miscarriage or disease, blending superstition with practical observation. These practices illustrate how health, ritual, and social roles were deeply intertwined, revealing a complex relationship between culture and bodily care. The persistence of body-specific remedies across time and cultures underscores a fundamental human tendency to link observable phenomena with actionable interventions. Even when anatomical understanding was limited, humans sought patterns, made analogies, and devised tangible strategies for relief. While many methods were misguided or dangerous, they were motivated by compassion, curiosity, and a profound desire to heal. Ultimately, these strange and sometimes unsettling remedies reflect our enduring effort to understand ourselves. They demonstrate how humans have historically bridged observation, imagination, and cultural meaning to approach health in ways that were both practical and symbolic. From powdered skulls to herbal signatures, these practices reveal that care for the body has always been as much about creativity, psychology, and hope as it has been about physiology and science.
Section 13. Conclusion. Lessons from the weirdest medicines of the past. As we reach the end of this journey through the strange and often bewildering world of historical medicine, one truth becomes abundantly clear. Human ingenuity and curiosity have always been boundless, even in the face of uncertainty. From powdered skulls to mummified remedies, from herbs shaped like the organs they were meant to heal, to rituals involving blood and bones. Past civilizations crafted elaborate systems of care that were deeply intertwined with culture, symbolism, and observation. While many of these practices seem bizarre or even grotesque to us today, they offer a profound window into how humans have grappled with illness and the mysteries of their own bodies. In studying these historical remedies, we notice that much of their power lay not solely in their physical effect, but in the psychological and symbolic reassurance they provided. For instance, the doctrine of signatures, which linked the form of plants to the organs they could heal, gave patients a tangible sense of alignment between nature and the human body. Similarly, the ritualized use of animal parts or human remains created a sense of control over disease in times when science offered little clarity. These approaches reveal a universal human desire to impose order on chaos, to find meaning in suffering, and to act decisively against the threats that illness posed. Across cultures, from the sophisticated herbal traditions of China and the Middle East to the humoral therapies of Europe, humankind consistently sought patterns in the body, often blending observation with imagination. Even when their anatomical understanding was limited, early physicians
and healers attempted highly specific interventions targeted to organs, tissues, or bodily systems. This specificity, however misguided in scientific terms, reflects a nuanced appreciation for the body as an interconnected whole, a concept that modern medicine increasingly acknowledges in areas like holistic care, psychosomatic medicine, and mind-body interventions. Yet perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these past remedies is how they mirror our own contemporary practices in surprising ways. Modern pharmaceuticals, although rigorously tested and precisely measured, are still administered with attention to specific organs, systems, or biochemical pathways. Placebos, rituals surrounding treatment, and patient expectations continue to demonstrate the psychological dimensions of healing, dimensions that ancient healers, with their powders, charms, and potions, intuited long before science could quantify them. It is a humbling reminder that while technology evolves, the human need for reassurance, ritual, and tangible interventions remains timeless. Looking back, one might also see these peculiar remedies as a testament to human resilience and adaptability. Faced with plagues, injuries, and chronic illnesses, our ancestors refused to remain passive. They experimented, observed, and innovated within the limits of their knowledge. Their creativity, whether it manifested in herbal concoctions, leech therapies, or even symbolic rituals, reflects a profound commitment to life and health. It was a creativity born of necessity, of wonder, and of an enduring belief that suffering could, in some form, be addressed. As we close this exploration, it is striking to recognize that the weirdest, most fascinating medical practices of the past were never mere curiosities. They were expressions of human courage and hope. They remind us that healing is not solely a scientific pursuit, but a deeply human one, shaped by culture, belief, imagination, and a desire to connect the visible and invisible forces of life. The bizarre remedies that once filled apothecaries, herbalist shops, and the minds of physicians are echoes of our ancestors' relentless quest to understand and care for their bodies, and in doing so, to assert control over the fragility of existence. In the end, the strange and sometimes shocking remedies of the past teach us more than just historical trivia. They reveal the depth of human creativity, the resilience of hope, and the intricate ways in which culture and medicine intertwine. By studying these oddities, we gain a richer understanding of our collective journey toward knowledge, health, and self-understanding, and a renewed appreciation for the courage and imagination of those who came before us.